Jesus is alive! Are you so excited? Because I'm so excited that Jesus is alive. What holiday did we celebrate last week to let us know that Jesus is alive? Do you remember? Do you remember what it was? That's right. It was Easter. Remember that Jesus had died on the cross and had been buried in a tomb? And then that Sunday morning, the women went to see him and Jesus wasn't there. Where'd he go? Did we talk about that? We sure did. He rose. The tomb was empty. Mary Magdalene saw him, and then Jesus was alive again. So far, the disciples had not seen Jesus at this time. And though some people had seen Jesus, the women who went to the tomb to see Jesus, the disciples had not. And they thought that it was nonsense. What's nonsense mean? Do you know what nonsense means? That's a hard word. Remember, nonsense, or maybe you don't know, but nonsense is something that doesn't make sense. It doesn't seem to make sense to the disciples that Jesus could be alive after they saw him dead. Doesn't make sense. After the women told them, some of the disciples ran to the tomb and also found it empty. But they didn't know yet what it meant. They had not seen Jesus for themselves. But that night, Sunday night, when all the disciples, except one, were in a locked room together, Jesus appeared to them. And Jesus said, "Peace be with you." After this, he showed them his hands and his side. Why do you think he showed the disciples, his hands and his side? Why do you think that? What went on with his hands and his sides for them to believe that it actually was Jesus? Well, do you remember that on the cross he was injured on his hands and on his side? And so if he showed the disciples the wounds on his hands and on his sides, then maybe they would believe. The disciples were overjoyed when they saw him. They believed that it was Jesus. But the disciples tried to tell Thomas, and he was the disciple that wasn't there during this time, tried to tell Thomas that Jesus was alive. But Jesus doubted them and said, What? I don't understand. How can Jesus be alive? He doubted. Well, what does doubt mean? Do you know what doubt means? Doubt means that you don't believe it. Like sometimes you doubt if you're going to get dessert after dinner. Do you believe it or not until you do what? Until you see that dessert on your plate. And then you believe. You might ask your mom and dad, "Do you think we're going to have dessert today?" And your mom says, "Well, I don't know." And then you probably doubt it. You probably don't believe it until you see it. Well, that's how Thomas was. He didn't believe that Jesus was alive until he could see it with his own eyes. Unless I see the nail marked in his hands and put my finger where the nails were and put my hand into his side, I will not believe. That's what Thomas said to the disciples. Those were pretty big words. What do you think you would have said? If the disciples told you that Jesus was alive, but you didn't believe him, would you have said the same thing that Thomas said? I probably would have doubted just a little bit because last time I saw Jesus, he was dead. And now you're telling me he's alive? I don't know. And so the next morning, Thomas was still doubting. But then the following Sunday, Jesus appeared to his disciples again. Guess what? All of his disciples were there, including Thomas. Jesus showed Thomas his hands and his side. And Jesus told Thomas, "Stop doubting and believe." Thomas said to Jesus, "My Lord, my God." Thomas finally believed. He didn't doubt anymore. Why? Because he could see. That's right. He could see Jesus' hands in Jesus' side. He saw the wounds. He knew that it was Jesus. Jesus said, because you have seen me, you have believed. Blessed are those who have not seen, yet have believed. Who are those who he's talking about? He's talking about you and me. We haven't seen Jesus yet, but because Thomas could believe, we are able to believe of things that we can't see. We can believe Jesus is alive. Jesus said we are blessed if we believe. Even though we have not seen him with our own eyes, we can know that these things are true because God says so. Jesus is alive. And I know that without a shadow of a doubt. I have no doubts. Do you?